Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Drawing with Mr. Sepulveda. I'm Mr. Sepulveda, and before we get started with today's episode, I did want to give you guys a big thank you. Together, we were able to reach 100 subscribers on this channel, so again, thank you so much for all of your support that you guys have shown to this channel. So today's episode is episode number 22. And on today's episode, I'm going to be drawing Zenitsu. So without further ado, here goes the time lapse. So in this stage in the drawing, you guys can see that I have a few reference photos. I got a couple action figures of Zenitsu, along with a couple of headshots of his from the anime. You guys can kind of see that I'm trying to work with form, try to create some sort of interesting pose for Zenitsu. So I'm not putting in a lot of details, just trying to figure out where the arm placements might be and the feet might be, along with how his body twists. As you can tell, this was the pose that I decided to go with. So on top of that little skeleton or mannequin that I created, this is kind of where I start sketching in some of the details for what I might want him to look like. And you'll notice as I go throughout, I start trying to change the proportions a little bit, or I start moving the character a little bit so that it fits a little bit better. Okay, so nothing I do actually does work on the first shot, which is fine. It's all like a learning process, and then just trying to get a really good feel for the character in this pose. Trying to figure out where some of the shadows might be, trying to adjust the kimono, the shoulder. I end up reversing the image over here. And again, just trying to figure out where the depth is. That's why I'm shading what's behind the kimono as being something a little bit darker. Right, adjusting the legs a little bit, pulling it out. And then this is where I start trying to figure out this arm over here. Like, where is it supposed to be placed? It's supposed to be placed that far out. Do I need to twist it a little bit? I thought it'd be easier just to draw the arm first and then figure out how the kimono is supposed to drape over it. So that's kind of where I ended up on that part of the sketch. So I'm using the red line to kind of adjust some of the blue lines. I'm trying to figure out where the sword's going to be placed. I'm trying to figure out how much of the detail is going to be shown, how much of it isn't, adjusting the proportions of the leg there. I end up moving that belt slightly, I believe, in my final sketch. So right now we're in the inking phase. So what I'm really looking at is adding in as much detail as possible, with the exception of course, like the shading and the light, because I'll do that whenever I get to my flats. So Zenitsu's hair is a little bit weird, right? It's really boxy looking, and so I had somewhat of a tough time trying to figure out how the hair should fall, because it looks odd to me at moments, because I'm so used to drawing a character with either straight hair or some spiky hair. Not so much of a squarish, rectangular-ish type of hairstyle. I did have fun with those eyebrows. I really did like Zenitsu's eyebrows there. Adding in some detail for the eyelids, right? There we go. Honestly, this hand gave me a little bit of a tougher time. And so you'll see really shortly how I don't actually stick with that outline that I created. I actually end up redrawing the entire hand again. So you'll see that really soon as I'm trying to adjust. So I'll start erasing, and I'm not liking the way the fingers are coming out. So there we go. So now I'm just kind of drawing a skeletal hand right there, trying to figure out where the hand should be, and I'm re-outlining the thumb into the fingers, and I begin to like the way that the fingers came out a little bit better on this second go around. So sometimes you just need to make some adjustments. So I didn't put enough detail in my sketch, so obviously I had to redo that part of the hand. So it wasn't too bad at the end though. So trying to figure out this belt and the shirt, but then I realized I think I had to move that and shift it over a little bit where the belt buckle was, because of where those right there, those circles are his buttons on the front of his uniform. So I needed to adjust that a little bit. So some of the things that I wanted to try out were adding extra lines, kind of like how I would when I'm really sketchy, like whenever I'm drawing some sketchy images with like pencil. And so I wanted to kind of incorporate that throughout. So you'll see a lot of lines just being flared out left and right. So you can see that I'm putting in more of these lines. Kind of just adding extra details as I go. I figured in this particular position, or in this particular pose, the flip-flop, we would be able to see the bottom portion of it because it's kind of like falling down a little bit, even though the straps are trying to hold it up. So there I am adding extra lines, extra details. I end up adding some to the kimono. Take a moment to kind of see what I might have missed or make some adjustments. I'm going to make some adjustments here and kind of extend those lines. And then of course the uniform is a long sleeve jacket with a long sleeve underneath it. So there's like the cuffs over there, adding some details to the arm. More details on the pants, more lines. Working out the sword design. Then I realized that it should be facing the other way. And then I just didn't like the way that it looked, so I erased it all and then I kind of readjusted. Then I erased some lines just to make it fit a little bit better. And there's a sword. I ended up moving the sword a little bit because it wasn't making sense with how I had it. So it's going to be readjusted shortly. So that's what I'm using the blue lines for, to kind of reline up. Making sure that it's all behind the hand. The other reason why I flipped it over was because he's right-handed, and so I had to make sure that it was flipped over so that his right hand would be grabbing the sword. So here I am adding in some of the flats. I had way too many lines on the hands. I wasn't a fan of it, so I ended up getting rid of it. So here I am using my selection tool so I can get in the colors in the right spot. So he's got like a black uniform. His kimono is a yellow uniform, or yellow color, but it does blend into orange. So I tried some different approaches with my digital painting. I normally don't ever use an airbrush for either shading or coloring and things like that. And so I'm going to try something new. And you guys will see it shortly when it comes to the kimono, and you're going to see it right here. So I'm kind of blending in the orange with an airbrush into the yellow, and then I start using a blending tool to make sure that the colors blend in nicely together, where it's not overpowering at all. So that was something a little bit new for me, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. Here I am trying to put a pattern onto his shirt, into his kimono rather, and I'm trying to mess around with a few effects just to kind of make it feel right. I end up deleting and then trying again later, so you'll see that right here. So I thought I needed to spread them out just a bit further. So that was part of the airbrush. You're going to see part of the airbrush again. So there I am, airbrushing in the orange parts of his hair and putting in some yellow and blending it again so that it looks a little bit more smoother. Start using the airbrush and blending into his eyes. So you'll see me kind of go back and forth with my color picker, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just grabbing colors from the original artwork so that I could utilize it into my digital painting. Okay, so I am coloring the whites of his eyes, coloring in the eyeballs, right? Trying to readjust the shapes. Because sometimes I'm just trying to figure out what his eye shape should be. It's not just for Zenitsu, I do it with most of my characters too. And then just seeing if I have to readjust the bottom eyelids or the top eyelids. So here I am trying to put in a typical highlight, like a high spot for the white color. I end up putting it in the top corners like I normally do. I try to do something different, as you saw with like some of those lines, but it just wasn't working out. I wasn't getting the right feel for it. Over here I'm coloring in his sword, and then you'll see that I'm trying to put in a little of that lightning design that he has on his sword, and so I wanted to make sure I had something like that. So again, I told you I was trying a different approach. So this is the airbrush, and I'm using the airbrush, or a soft airbrush, and just kind of going over certain areas over again just to make certain parts darker than others. And then I'll go back in with my blending tool and a soft eraser to try to get a nice seamless transition throughout. So I do that with for shading, and then you'll see me do the same thing again when it comes to the lights for the light source. I really do like the way that most of those blended out nicely, that you get different tones, and I'll kind of blend right there on top of his sock right there. I do go in with like my generic G pen just to kind of darken up the insides, and I did that with the G pen as well. I did the top portion with the G pen, but then went back to the airbrush so I can get that fade, or that faded look. And then of course going back in after the blender with a soft eraser. There's some more shading. Try to make sure it stretches down to the bottom. And a lot of this is just trial and error. Again, this is like my first time trying to mess around with like an airbrush for shading and light purposes. Normally I would just go in with like cell shading and just kind of drop in the color pretty hard, and then of course, you know, lighten up the opacity for it. So I went back to put my color in so I could just kind of see what the shadows look like on top of it. And then I go in for the light source. I figured he's already going to do some sort of like lightning type of technique, and so I decided to use the sword as the light source. And so I put the colors back in, and I'm messing around with a few filters here, a few effects for the light source. And then seeing if I have to go in with like a soft brush, or if I change the color by itself. Like you notice I went from red to blue, just trying to see what sorts of colors will mess around and kind of fit a little bit better. And then of course I go back in with a blender and a soft eraser just to make it fit a little bit better. So here I am thinking about the background. I was thinking again lightning, but that wasn't working, and I thought a cool glow behind the sword would be awesome with some lightning coming off of it. And so you'll see me think about that a little bit harder. I decided to go a little bit darker, and this is kind of like the effects that I thought would make it pop out more. I kind of duplicated it, stretched it out a little bit, faded it, and then I kind of gave him this cool glow with these bolts of lightning. course, once you're done, you gotta sign it, right? So this right here is me finishing it up, just kind of like erasing certain parts, just trying to make sure that it's cleaned up as well as I'd like it to be. So there I am, just kind of going back in with the soft eraser because I kind of see some shadows kind of blending in where I didn't want them to. Here I am just panning through the picture, trying to take a final look at it, trying to make sure it's fine. And this is ultimately the finished product right over here. So guys, please let me know what you think about it. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you're new, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But again, a special thank you to all of you guys for helping me reach 100 subscribers. Thank you so much. I'll see you next month in the next video.